on set as a director, you have to really listen to what your actors are doing, see what they're doing. If they're doing great, stay out of their way. If something's rubbing you the wrong way, you got to investigate.
Today's show is sponsored by Enigma Elements. As filmmakers, we're always looking for ways to level up production value of our projects and speed up our workflow. This is why I created Enigma Elements, your one-stop shop for film grains, color grading LUTs, vintage analog textures like VHS and CRT images, smoke, fog textures, DaVinci Resolve presets, and much more. After working as an editor, colorist, post, and VFX supervisor for almost 30 years, I know what film creatives need to level up their projects. Check out enigmaelements.com and use the coupon code IFH10 to get 10% off your order. I'll be adding new elements all the time. Again, that's Enigma, ENIGMA, elements.com. Well, guys, today we continue our coverage of the Tribeca Film Festival, and I sit down with writer-director Sean Mullin. Now, his story is remarkable, how he was able to get this little independent film off the ground, losing half the budget a few weeks before production, how he was able to rally to get that going, where that film became a huge hit and launched his career, to his latest film, It Ain't Over, the Yogi Berra documentary, which is remarkable, by the way, and everything in between. So let's dive in. I'd like to welcome to the show, Sean Mullin. How you doing, Sean?
Great. How are you, Alex?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. We're going to talk about your new film, It Ain't Over, which is of the late great Yogi Berra, and I learned so much about Yogi watching it. And when your pitch came across my desk, I was like, well, I got to see Yogi. I don't want to wait until it hits the mainstream. I got to see it now. And I fell in love with it because, as I'm sure you know, you probably fell in love with it making it. You fell in love with Yogi just making.
Absolutely. No, he's definitely a surrogate grandfather through the pandemic for me and a lot of folks involved. So absolutely.
So before we get down to your latest project, I wanted to go back into the archives.
Okay, sure.
So why in God's green earth did you want to get into this business?
I don't think I wanted to. I think anybody who wants to, I don't know, I'm a little skeptical of maybe.
Because they're insane.
It just was more of it just came out of me, I just felt like it was something. As a kid, I was always writing short stories. I was always the one kind of getting people together and telling jokes in the corner of class. I got in trouble a lot, obviously, for that. And I just was always a storyteller. And I got a kid when I was I ended up going to West Point for college, and I bought a video camera and I recorded all my buddies telling stories and all that stuff. And so, I just always wrote and always, that just kind of, I don't know, came out pretty organically. So I just feel like it's who I am, really, instead of like who I wanted to be. I don't know.
Fair enough, because I agree with you. If somebody wants to be in this business, you got to look at them a little side-eyed, especially now that, say, if you've got especially if you got some shrapnel on you, literally like, battle hardened through this business. It's you're like, do you really want to go down the, like, so my son wants to be in the business. I go, run away. Is there anything else you can do? If there is, and you love it, I do that.
I've been teaching on and off for the past decade. And that's one of the first lectures I give is like, listen, if you can live with yourself doing anything else, do that. But if you can't, if it's a calling, if it's something inside you, well, then you're screwed, and just, good luck, go after it. But be passionate. Don't give up, and work hard, and, collaborate, and all the things you need to do to create great work.
I call it the beautiful illness, because it's a thing. You're stuck with it. You can't get rid of it. It's with you for life.
Yep.
No vaccine is going to get rid of it, and it can go dormant for decades. But it always. I have 60-year-olds coming out like, I was a doctor, but what I really want to do is direct.
Grab a camera. Grab a camera, doc, and you can finance your own project. Absolutely.
Now, I have to ask you, you had a very interesting start to your career, if you will, outside of the film industry, where you were in the military. And then you were also one of the 9/11 first responders. Is that correct?
Yes, I was in Manhattan. I was the plans officer for the New York National Guard on the morning of September 11th. So before the attacks, we didn't need too many plans, and then we needed a lot, obviously, that day. And so I ended up spending the first 2 weeks full time, and then I was kind of part time for a couple months. And then in January of '02, it would have been, they gave me a new title and promoted me to captain and put me in charge of the soldiers at Ground Zero from like January until August of '02. And I was in charge of the bridges and tunnels in Manhattan and Ground Zero, just making sure, everything was running smoothly. So at the same time, though, I had moved to New York City. I had left active duty and moved to New York City a couple years prior, and become a stand-up comedian and there was a new theater had just opened, Upright Citizens Brigade. UCB Theater opened in '99, and so I started doing improv theater. And it was kind of a weird double life of working at Ground Zero and doing comedy at night. That kind of Well,
it was tough to even. It's tough to even say a joke back then. I remember, like.
Yeah,
remember that Saturday Night Live episode?
Absolutely.
Can we be funny?
Can we be funny now? Absolutely, yeah. Giuliani, I wonder whatever happened to him.
I never heard of him.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think I did comedy until probably at least October, November. It definitely took about a month or so off, and then it was hard. It was a hard time. It was a crazy time in the city, but very formative time for me. And then while I was at Ground Zero, I applied. I said, screw it. Again, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to be a storyteller. So I applied to grad school, and I got accepted spring of '02 into Columbia's MFA program for film directing. And so I left the military summer '02 and went right. I mean, I was in my uniform one day. It was the last day I shaved, actually. It was August 15, 2002. And I went to Columbia the next day for grad school.
Now, I'd imagine that the work that you did at Ground Zero and also in the military prepared you to be a director in many ways because of just organizing large groups of people, making sure things get done.
Absolutely. No, it's interesting. The first thing some people will hear, or some people say to me when I tell them I'd gone to West Point and all that, they'll be like, well, how are you a filmmaker? Those are so completely different worlds. And I jokingly, I was interviewed by West Point magazine, did a little piece on me after my first film. And I was kind of tongue in cheek said West Point's the best film school in the country. I mean, I obviously, a little bit of a joke there, but leadership is really what it's all about, and being able to command your unit. And when you have a film set, it's the same thing, creating this environment where you're inspiring people. You're not just telling people what to do, you're actually inspiring them. And yeah, I mean, I think there's so many parallels to being a good leader in the military and a director who can get the vision across while also, navigating all the obstacles that arise during production.
Now, I was going back into your IMDb and I went all the way back to the bottom.
Okay.
Where you get that first PA gig.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
What was that? I'm sure you have stories that you tell on air and off air.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. The Best Thief in the World was the name of the film. And I was a PA. They found out I had come from Ground Zero. And so they put me in charge of all walkie-talkies. They put me in charge of anything, even remote, all logistics. I mean, I was running all the truck. I was doing everything. But it was a great experience. It was the summer. That would have been summer of '03. That was my first real on-set gig.
And I'm assuming, of course, you were paid very well, handsomely.
Yeah, still living off it, actually. Still living off the interest. Yeah.
But so what was the biggest lesson you learned on those days, those first days on set? Because I remember when I was a PA, I was just absorbing everything. Like I just absorbed what the director was doing, what the production was doing. I worked in the office. I worked on set. I was just absorbing as much. What was that lesson? That was the thing that you learned those first few weeks.
I think the biggest lesson for me was I had just finished my first year of grad school. So I'm on a real set and I had interned for the production company that produced the movie in the spring. And so had been involved and read the script and got to meet the director and everything. And I think for me, the biggest thing I learned is that I can do this. Like I pictured myself in the director's chair and I felt confident. I mean, yes, I was a PA, but I felt it didn't feel like such a far stretch. It demystified the process a lot, and it actually got me really excited that I knew, once I had the funds and the ability to make a first feature, I would be able to. I felt confident I'd be able to pull it off.
Isn't it funny that most PAs are sitting there going, I could do better than this guy.
I didn't. Yeah. Well, listen,
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah.
You know,
But I could, but I just, it didn't, I didn't feel like it was beyond the reach of my capabilities. I felt like, I felt good. It felt like vindication. Like, okay, I see what he's doing. I see he's got a shot list. I see he's got his stuff, and he's talking to actors. I know that world too a bit. So yeah, it was really kind of an exciting time, to be honest with you.
And as well as when you're a stand-up, because I've worked with a ton of stand-ups throughout my career, and it is such an art form, and it's so hard to do good stand-up. Like, it's one of the hardest things on the planet to do, honestly. And knowing that you were a stand-up as well, that you got up in front of that mic and everything, what did you bring from that to your directing? Because there are some skills that overlap, but what was it that was there anything you brought over?
I think the biggest thing was just being in the moment, because even, being in the moment as a director is the most important thing. I mean, all this years and years of headache and sweat and tears and blood that go into like getting a script in the right place and getting everything attached and getting the money. All that matters is what's between action and cut, right? And you've got to really, really to be locked in. And I'm extremely focused right there in the moment. And that's always with stand up too. You had to be, but you also have to react, right? You have to react to the audience, and you have to, and stand up, and then, on set as a director, you have to really listen to what your actors are doing, see what they're doing. If they're doing great, stay out of their way. If something's rubbing you the wrong way, you got to investigate. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing I got, was just the ability to really be in the moment and receptive to shifts in tone or anything else that might throw off the story.
I mean, to be fair, directing is compromise. The whole thing is it's constantly compromised. I always love coming to set with this obscene shot list, and I gave it to the first AD, and the first AD is like, we're not going to make it. I'm like, I'm there. It's there just in case. Just in case. I know I have 50 shots before lunch. I know that. I got it. I got 50 setups before lunch. I know we'll get to 5. But just in case, I like to have.
I AD'd a lot in grad school because, again, the military, I'm a 6'5" military guy, so everybody was like, oh, he can tell people what to do without being a jerk. And so, so I did a lot of ADing, and that really helped. That helped inform my directing as well. I'm very selective with my shot. I'm much more, I'd rather have less setups and more takes is kind of my approach. So.
Yeah, exactly. Now, how did you get your first film, Amira and Sam, off the ground?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's definitely a long story, but it was just, it had been it took me 7 years from the time I got my MFA in 2006 till the time we shot summer of 2013. And it was just a real struggle. I'd written some other scripts. I had worked as a screenwriter. I had gotten hired to write, I got hired to write 2 scripts pretty quickly out of grad school. One for Britney Spears, which was pretty insane, working with her for a year, to say the least. And then another one, and another script that couldn't be more different, a military drama for an Oscar-nominated documentarian, Henry-Alex Rubin, who did Murderball, that documentary Murderball.
Yeah,
I wrote a screenplay for him. I actually got hired to write that screenplay when I was in grad school in 2005, and the film actually got made 14 years later. It came out about 2 years ago. It's called Semper Fi. That script. So I was working as a screenwriter. I was doing other things. My creative partner from Columbia, Mike Connors, who's my best friend, and we have a production coming out here in LA. He made a feature that I produced called Allegiance in 2012. And so producing his feature, I really started to understand, what it takes. That really, if you're going to make an independent film, you've got to, especially if you don't come from any means, you've got to figure it out. The last thing my parents ever, bought me was a one-way plane ticket to West Point. So I've been out here hustling, trying to scrape together money. To get things made. And so, we just, I was able to kind of I landed with a great production company. I got very fortunate to be introduced to a production company. Matt Miller and Eric Lochner at the time have a company called Vanishing Angle. And they actually, fast forward, Vanishing Angle is the production company on It Ain't Over as well. So it's just a good lesson in keeping up relationships. But at the time it was Matt and Eric. Now it's run by Matt Miller and Natalie Metzger. But yeah, so we got the script. I got the script to them. We got some money together. We thought we were going to make it for $600K. We went out, made offers. We got Martin Starr attached, which was incredible. It was really exciting. He had never been the lead in a feature film before, or let alone a romantically, let alone a special forces,
Right.
Green Beret. So it was really something different for him, a real departure. But he was really drawn in with the script, and I think I was able to sell him over a lunch, and we got him attached, and then we got Dina Shahabi, which was like this incredible actress. She was still in grad school at the time, getting her MFA at NYU in acting. She's since blown up. She's doing a million things, and she was just on this Archive 81, which was a big Netflix thing. But she did Jack Ryan and all this other stuff. She's an incredible actress, but this was her first film as well. Lead role, and so it was just, we killed ourselves, and then half the budget, half the money fell. We thought we had 600. We had kind of verbal commitments for 600, and then by the time we're shooting, we had 300. So I had to cut another week out. So it was, instead of a 4-week shoot, it was a 3-week shoot, and it was just a mess. So we shot 97 pages in 16 and a half days, which was a real difficult thing. But through all that trial and tribulation, we ended up having a really wonderful premiere, and we ended up winning awards, over 10 film festivals, and we got picked up by Alamo Drafthouse. Tim League saw the film, watched it, bought it, and put it out in Alamo Drafthouse theaters, which was really exciting. And I got signed at an agency and all that stuff. So it served its purpose of what I needed it to do, and I also I obviously love the film, so it means a lot to
It's fascinating that. I'd love to hear this kind of stories of like, we had 600, but then we really only had 300. Yeah. That you kept going is a testament to your ability and your team's ability to just make it happen, because it happens so often. And so many filmmakers coming up, they don't understand like when the money drops, that the concept of the money dropping until it's in the bank, until it's an escrow that you can pull a check. It's nothing.
It's nothing. No. And when I said we had 600, I think we had 10 grand in the bank. I mean, we had verbal for 600, and then then money. I mean, Meg Jarrett. I mean, she's the angel to that project. She wrote the first check, and then actually Peter Sobolov, who ended up producing, being one of the lead producers. Peter and Mike Sobolov, who were big producers on the Yogi doc. They actually came in as well and brought some money, and so. It was just nerve-wracking. We were raising money all the way up through prep, and it was a nightmare. I was still finding locations. It was a real mess. But at that point in my life, also the film has anything that I would, I think is too much. I think I crammed too much into it. I was like, this is my shot. This is it. This is the only film I'm, this is the only film I'm ever going to get to make. It's been 7 years since grad school. I mean, it was really tough. I was married, had a young daughter. I was like, this is it. This was my shot. And so there was no way I was backing down. And if it didn't succeed, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done.
You, as they say, you went up to the plate, sir.
Absolutely.
And you took a swing, and that's, and I mean, I've been there, brother. I've been there that, you're like, this is my shot. I got this has to go. The train is left. This is leaving the station on this day.
It's over. Yeah.
Regardless of what happens, we're making something.
If I'm following Martin and Dina around with a camera, for a few weeks, we're going to get something. But everything fell into place. I just had incredible support. And Terry Leonard was a producer who really came on board and really helped out with that. And my cinematographer, Danny Vecchione, Danny also is a cinematographer. Worked with him on multiple projects since, and he shot the Yogi doc. So again, a lot of my key creative relationships were started with that film.
Now, as you know, many times when we're on set as a director, there's that day, that moment that you're losing the sun. Camera breaks. The actor can't get to set. Yeah. What was that moment for you on that film, and how did you overcome it?
I mean, there were about 13 of those.
I was about to say every day. Every day.
But no, I mean, there's one in particular that Dina still brings up to me, because I'm still really close. I mean, Dina and Martin and I, we get together for dinners all the time. And we're really still close, and we really bonded during that. Again, that's another kind of similarity to the military, but you bond through the stress, right? And so there was one. So we. The film, there were different days, we were averaging over 7 pages a day. So that was pretty tricky. But there was, one day where we had there's a long scene that takes place in a bed, which is like a 10-page scene. So that was we got like 12 or 13 pages that day, which is huge. So, but we had an action day where we had all of our boat scenes and all of our motorcycle scenes, it was just our kind of most logistically challenging day. And the weather had to be right, and everything had to just be perfect. Like we didn't have a minute to spare. And we couldn't when we got on the boat to shoot the boat scenes, we didn't have enough people. It was myself, DP, producer, sound, and then the actors. That's all we could fit on the boat. And on one of the takes, it was a perfect take. I loved everything, but Dina had left on her jean jacket because she was cold, and so the continuity, it wouldn't cut it all, and it was a big meatiest part of the scene, and I almost broke. I mean, that was the closest I came to breaking, because I didn't know if we could do it again. So we had to circle back around because everything has to match. And then the weather, and then I've got these motorcycles waiting for us, which we've got to get to them in time to get the sunset motorcycle shots. And I'm on the boat, and it's just, so that was probably the closest I came to kind of breaking. I mean, there's a lot of emotional moments. I mean, the most emotional moment making it, though, was when we had told all the agents and everybody there was a $600,000 movie. That's what went out to Martin and everything like that. And for Martin Starr, it's like, oh, that's not a lot of money. I can't believe it. And about 2/3 of the way through the shoot, we were shooting the scene at this mock police station, and Martin pulled me aside, and we had been through a lot at this point, and he said, I don't know how. I go, Sean, I just need to tell you, I don't know how you guys are pulling this off for $600,000. and I just started crying. Tears came out of my eyes, and he's like, what's up? And he gave me a hug, and I said, Martin, we only have $300,000. And he hugged me back, and he started crying, and we're just there hugging, crying each other outside this, made up police station that we, shot somewhere. So anyways, moments like that, it's a lot, it's a lot.
Now, is there something that you wish somebody would have told you at the beginning of your career? Piece of advice or something? Oh
man, I don't know. I'm not a big regret guy, look back guy. I don't, I'm never good at that. So no, I mean, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, they could have told me a lot of things. I could have,
hey, you're not going to get 600. You're going to get 300.
Yeah, you're going to get 300. I mean, no,
nice.
Just how, I mean, I think I was ready. I think I was prepared for how hard it was. I mean, it's been very difficult. It's been very difficult on even personal relationships and stuff. And, it's just been hard. It's been a hard road.
And that's the thing that so many young filmmakers coming up don't understand, that this is not an easy path. This is the artist's path is not an easy path, but the filmmaker path is even more complex because it costs so much for us and we have to convince other people to come along with us. It's very difficult to do it all by yourself, if not impossible. So it's I always like bringing these kind of stories up so filmmakers listening, especially young filmmakers, understand what's ahead of them, not to scare them off, but just to understand the rules of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you almost have to just be possessed, which is, for better or for worse. But you need a lot of collaborators. You need a lot of support. You need people to vouch for you. That's why I now, vouch for younger filmmakers whenever I can and help out. I've had interns over the years. I've got another one this summer, Giselle Bonilla. She's really great. And so I'm looking out for her, trying to pass along any advice I can. And actually I teach a class. I teach 2 classes over at AFI, the MFA program in directing. And I teach in the fall. It's like a directing 101. It's a 4-semester program. I teach in the fall. I teach a directing 101 class, shot selection, shot progression, kind of basic directing class, intro to directing. And then the 4th semester, I teach a class called The First Feature, where we go through and we do case studies of dozens of first features and, what works, what doesn't. So I'm doing my best to pass along any knowledge I've gotten over the years to make things a little bit easier, but it's never going to be easy for anyone.
I mean, you can tell somebody, don't put your hand in the fire because it's hot. Until you get into that fire, baby, you really don't know.
That's true. That's so true.
You hear all these stories by us old timers who are sitting around talking about it, but until as they say, you're in the shit. You really won't know what's going on. Now, I when I was looking through your filmography, I'm like, okay, so he did this amazingly wonderful romantic comedy. How does he go from, a romantic comedy to Semper Fi, which is complete 180, obviously much bigger budget, a bigger cast and action and different tone. How did you get as a creative and as a director?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really, when I'm looking at stories, I don't look at genre or, even, I don't really necessarily pay attention to format. I'm doing more docs now, but it's really to me, it's about character and story. And for me, the stories that have resonated the most are stories where there's some sort of tension between perception and reality. So for Amir and Sam, it was, the perception and reality of a veteran returning from war and an Iraqi refugee. It's this kind of star-crossed lover thing where there's a tension there. And with Yogi, the perception of Yogi versus the reality of Yogi. So for me, that's what I'm really keyed into, is every story I've gotten involved with has some sort of tension between perception and reality. And so I don't really, whether it's a comedy or drama or doc or scripted, I don't think any of that matters. To me, it's about kind of, the story and the characters. And if I can uncover some sort of tension that is compelling.
How did you approach the action? Because you hadn't at that point. Have you had shot any action at that point or no?
You talking about for Semper Fi?
Yeah.
So I did not direct Semper Fi. So
you just wrote that.
Yeah,
you wrote it. You wrote
no,
it.
No. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. So Henry-Alex Rubin, who did Murderball.
Oh, okay.
He ended up he directed it. So I was just I was a co-writer. I co-wrote the script with him, and then I was a co-producer on as well because I was involved. I had 155 drafts over 14 years and not one dime until the first day of shooting, really. So
at that point you should I'm going to be involved a little bit.
Well, I tried to be as involved as they'd let me. Yeah.
Now when I saw Beer Fest, and it was really interesting because I love the way you shoot docs. It's very interesting, very cinematic. It's, there's some documentarians who shoot it like a documentarian, but you seem to shoot it like a documentarian with a cinematic eye. And
Kings of Beer, you talking about?
Kings of Beer. I'm sorry, not Beer.
Kings of Beer. Beer Fest was a different. Yeah.
I just had Jay on the show. I'm sorry.
Oh, did you? Oh, nice.
I just had Jay on the show.
Jay was amazing. No, that was fun. That was my first documentary. It was called Kings of Beer, and I tried to bring I brought my DP, who's a really incredible cinematographer, Danny Vecchione, and he's got a real cinematic eye, and so we tried to visually design it as kind of, to make it look kind of, as cinematic as possible. And I'm glad. I'm really proud of it. That was my first doc, and it was also it had a little bit of a stink on it, I think, for some people after the release because it was financed by Budweiser. So a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is propaganda. This is stuff." But I was like, "Listen, I did get paid. It's the first time in my life I got paid really well." I was like, "Oh, this is what directors get paid. Oh, this is." If
I could do this every 5 months.
Yeah, exactly. So I understood that end of it. So yeah, Budweiser did finance it, but they weren't involved. They weren't super involved with the editor or any of the stuff. It was really up to me, and I was really went after character and went after perception versus reality. When this is Kings of Beer is probably one of my best examples, where if I tell you who are the top 5 brewmasters at Budweiser, you probably like, well, first of all, you didn't know they had multiple Budweisers. But you'd probably like, oh, they're heavy-set, bearded white dudes from the Midwest, like just pressing a button, Homer Simpson taking a nap, right? But no, it was the 5 top brewmasters. There's 65 breweries around the world that brew Bud, and the top 5 that I followed for a year were African-American female, African-American male, a Chinese man from Wuhan, went to Wuhan actually, which was crazy. Shot there right before everything happened. Didn't speak any English. And then another woman from Canada who brews in New Hampshire, and then this white dude who was an Army combat vet, which was like really fascinating story. So again, flipping people's perceptions of what a brewmaster might be, and I'm really proud of the film. And it taught me how, when I was finishing up post with that, is when I got the call from Peter Mike Soboloff saying, "Hey, we know the Berras, we've got an into them. Would you be interested in directing a documentary about Yogi?" And I was like, my initial reaction was like, well, give me a beat, because Yogi seems too perfect. Like, what's the drama? What's the tension, right? And then I started reading. I read some books, and I went online. I watched some videos, and I was like, oh no, there's something here. There's a real tension between who he was and who people thought he was. So I dove in.
Yeah. So let's talk about It Ain't Over, because Yogi, I agreed with you. When I watched the film, I knew Yogi as a pitchman. I knew him as a baseball player, obviously, but I really didn't understand the impact that he had on the Yankees, and not only on Yankees, on baseball itself, and how he was not respected as, or put in the light that he should have been in, because he was as good, if not better, than any of those guys on those teams. That he won 10 championships.
There's one stat that's, and this is just for the baseball people out there, but there's one stat that we couldn't shoehorn in the movie. You have 90 minutes to tell this guy's incredible, 90 year journey. And so we couldn't fit everything in, but there are only 2 players in the history of baseball to finish in the top 4 of MVP voting for 7 straight years. And that's really tough to do because it's really about consistency to finish that high in MVP voting. Yogi won 3 of them, but he finished in the top 4 7 years in a row. The only other player to do it was Mike Trout. So, he's not talked about though in the same kind of levels as some of these guys. And so that was definitely something we were going after. He's also, and again, just from the Yankees legacy, he's the only, if you look at his life, and we cover this in the doc, but he came up as a rookie and met Babe Ruth and shook hands with Babe and got to know him a little before Babe passed. And then he was mentored by DiMaggio, and then he was a teammate of Mantle, and then Maris. Of course he's a coach, in Maris, of course, and Whitey and that whole crew, and then fast forward to he's a coach for Guidry and Willie Randolph and Reggie, and then he's the manager for Mattingly, and then he mentors Jeter and Girardi and that whole crew too. So there's nobody who's done that from shaking hands with Babe Ruth to mentoring Derek Jeter. There's, he really is the
connective tissue. Absolutely.
The backbone of the Yankees. Yeah.
It was. And then, that whole 14-year bit with him and George Steinbrenner. That was insane. Do you know that when I was down in Fort Lauderdale watching spring training, I got George Steinbrenner to sign my baseball.
Well, there you go.
He was signing baseballs, and I made it onto ESPN to even some kids were looking for George Steinbrenner autograph.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy. I think Bob Costas put it well in the documentary. He was a polarizing figure, but he did love the Yankees and he did love Yogi. They had obviously a bit of a falling out, but we were able to interview George's son Hal, and he couldn't have been more kind and just really wonderful about things he had to say about Yogi. So it was really nice to be able to talk to so many wonderful people. You saw the interviews. We got some great ones. So
some amazing ones. Yeah, no, but I have to ask you. So when and I've had other people on the show who've tackled large, just kind of like big shadows of people, just massive personalities. How do you approach someone's legacy like this? Because I know you were doing it with the help of the family, so that actually helps, obviously, that you're not doing it against the wishes of the family and everything. But how do you even approach telling that story? The pressure on you, people are going to look at this documentary. This is going to be what people go back and look at about Yogi, because there really isn't a definitive documentary on Yogi. Not
yet.
There is now, sir. There is now.
June 11th. Yeah, there will be. No, we're really proud of it. And no, the family was incredible. The biggest concern from day one was to not make it some sort of hagiography, some sort of puff piece, some sort of that's documentaries that just put their subjects on a pedestal. And then I call these things, I was very upfront with my producers on day one. I said, I don't want to do I call it a Wikipedia doc, a wiki doc, where it's just they were born, they did this, they did that. There's a difference between emotion, right? Which is what I'm after, and information, which is what you can Google, right? And so I'm really, really, it had to play emotionally. I think it does play. I don't know. I let you lead if you, I don't know.
Agreed. I teared up a few times.
Yeah. So and if it doesn't have that emotional component to it, I'm not interested in directing it. So I was very upfront with that from day one. So it was how are we going to tell the story in a way that is going to really get to the heart of audiences? And so, but at the same time, without it being, just too much of a, like I said,
a puff piece, like a puff piece. You're absolutely right, because some documentaries are just very informative. They're just it's like Wikipedia style. You're right. I like the wiki doc idea, the concept.
I'm working on 2 docs right now, 2 other docs, and that's my number one thing is what can we offer people that is actually truly cinematic, that is actually going to engage them in a way emotionally, and lives right here instead of living up here,
Yeah, and then the whole I knew Yogi Berra, I knew that whole backstory, but I didn't know how deep it went. Why he was called Yogi? I always wondered why he was called that's obviously not his Italian name.
Right. Yeah.
There was one piece in the documentary that blew my mind. I just could not believe that happened, because I think he was the first. He caught the first no hitter in
perfect game. He caught the only. He called all 97 pitches. So so Larson was just like locked in, like, tell me, Yogi, what to do, and he never called, and he didn't shake him off. He didn't shake him off once in 97 pitches. Yeah.
So then. Yeah, later. Decades later, he makes up. Yeah, it's Yogi Berra Day.
Well, you can't.
And at Yankee Stadium.
You can't. Well, it's the type thing in a documentary too, where I'm always looking at where if I were to script it, it would the producers would throw it out. They said this is ridiculous, and that's when I think you've got a doc that really works, is when there's a moment that is so unbelievable that you couldn't have scripted it, and that moment had that, and it's also a great example of that information's been out there forever. Like, you could have read that on Wikipedia, and you could have read it in books. It's in books. It's a fact that he was part of these two perfect games. But until you see it, until you are involved, until you're experiencing it through everything he had gone through, that's the difference between, again, a cinema treatment and just a little wiki doc thing.
Now, on a business standpoint, when, because I've studied docs for, most of my career, I'm a big fan of docs, but on a business standpoint, I always find it so interesting when filmmakers work on docs that have a built-in audience. So especially when it's a larger than life figure like Yogi, how hard was it to get the financing to put this whole thing together, all that? Because people think like, oh, you're making a Yogi Berra doc. I mean, the money must have just been rolling in.
No, well, believe me, no, I could listen, that's a whole nother. I mean, I was extremely, extremely fortunate that from day one, Peter and Mike Soboleff, who were the first two, they were the ones who put the whole kind of project together at the very beginning and called me and asked me to direct. They went out and raised the budget themselves. I mean, the two of them, I couldn't have been more fortunate to work with, two more supportive, just bold, producers. And the first thing that they did, they went out and, while they were out raising the money, I went and I turned right back to Vanishing Angle, Matt Miller and Natalie Metzger, again, who produced my first feature, Amir and Sam, years ago. And I said, hey, would you guys want to team up with the Soboleffs? This could be a good team. They can kind of go out and raise the money and lead that front. You guys can handle the production side of it. And then I got my old editor, Julian Robinson, from Amir and Sam, who's an incredible editor. The film is very well edited. And all the archival he had to dig through and all the stuff. So, and I got Danny, my old cinematographer, who kind of put the band back together and made it happen. But as far as raising the money, fortunately, Peter has really good ties to a lot of folks who are huge Yankee fans, and he's a big finance guy in New York. So he was able to, him and Mike were able to make it happen somehow.
Right, exactly. Because if you tap into, there's a certain pool in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was nice. Well, the craziest thing is over the course of making this documentary, Peter and Mike have gotten involved and are now minority owners in the Yankees, actually. So they actually own a piece of the Yankees too, which is totally aside from the doc, just happened. So that's pretty cool. They're great. They're a great team.
Yeah. So and then you've gotten to Tribeca, obviously. So what was it like getting that call, man?
It was wonderful. It felt like the right place. It just felt like this is where we wanted to premiere the film. So we knew it. We were hoping, and they called us right away. And they called us super early, back in November, November. Way early. And,
oh wow, that's super early.
I mean, before they even closed, closed submissions, and they're like, hey, we want this, and we got excited, and then we were able to get an incredible, as if the indie film business, you need a great sales agent. And so we started at the top, and we took a stab at John Sloss at Cinetic, and he flipped for it, and he's been him and the whole team at Cinetic have been really incredible. So they're selling it. So that's great. So just started putting all the pieces together.
Man, I really hope it gets out there, because for any baseball fan out there, I mean, Yogi's just, I mean, even if you're not a baseball fan, if you're a certain age, who Yogi is, purely because he did thousands of commercials.
A lot.
I mean, he did a lot of commercials, man. It was like, even the doc, he's like, I don't know, I'm doing it was Aflac or something like that.
Yeah.
He was like,
Amtrak, Aflac. He didn't know, he didn't know which one it was. He's like, it's one of those. Yeah.
I'm getting a check. It's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine.
yeah.
But he seemed like such a sweet guy, man, and such an authentic guy. Like it's one of those people that they don't make souls like that anymore. Like they truly don't.
He just, I mean, this is what I tell people about the film. It was a real honor and pleasure to tell a story about someone who just always did the right thing. He just always did the right thing. That was it. He just, at every turn, whether it was, breaking the color barrier and helping, befriending, Jackie Robinson and Larry Doby and all these guys who are coming into the league who, whatever, just at every turn, the film is really about a life well lived, and it's broader. One of the kind of templated films we looked at when we were looking at these docs was the Mr. Rogers doc, had come out. That was one of the things
beautiful.
And that was one of the films that actually sparked the Sobolovs to call me. Because actually I got the call from them in July of 2018. So it was the summer that movie. So this project's been going on 4 years. I got the call in July of 2018, and they had just seen that doc, and they were like, we need to do something kind of in that vein for Yogi. And so, just a real, I was extremely honored, and, and just the fact that, Lindsay's happy with it. The granddaughter, she's incredible. She narrates the film, and I'm just excited for the rest of the bear. The biggest audience to have seen this film so far is 4 people, and we're premiering in a 1,000-seat theater next Saturday. So it's gonna be something.
Now, a really important question is though, was Jackie safe?
What's the craziest thing? I mean, you can, did you like that little piece in the film, the back and forth? I thought it was a lot of fun.
It was. Yeah. I'm talking about Jackie Robinson's. There's a very famous play at home plate where Yogi thinks he got him, but Jackie was ruled safe. The great Jackie Robinson, and to his grave.
Oh, yeah.
His grave. He would never.
He would never land.
Even when you saw frame by frame, I was watching it, and I'm like,
what do you think?
When I first saw it, I'm like, nah, he got him out.
Yeah.
But then there was like that one sequence where the other angle, and I'm like,
yeah. What's really great about it. So from the front angle, he looks out, but from the reverse angle, he definitely looks safe. So, but it's safer out. It's great. I mean, what's great about baseball too, right?
Yeah.
Is that, that was game 1 of the 55 series, and it was a really big deal. And Yogi was at his height, and Jackie was, these were characters who were larger than life, and to have that massive play at home plate in the steal of home, and who steals home anymore? So it was really great. But no, if you look at, that's the great thing about it. If you look at it from one angle, he looks clearly out, and another angle, he looks safe. So it's great.
Now I'm going to ask you a couple questions to ask all my guests, sir.
Sure.
What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
What advice? That's start making films, no matter how big or small. Just start shooting, start learn the craft, understand what a shot means, understand when you're subjective, it means something. When you're objective, it means something. Learn how to compress, learn how to elaborate, learn the fundamentals. Just through, you can shoot, one of the classes I teach at AFI, and I taught at USC for a few years before as well. They've got a great program there. And, I just would run my students through these like very basic exercises, like character A wants something from character B, and, create a story, no dialogue, and just how do you articulate beats? So just like learning the basics of like, how do shots add up to, an emotional impact, with an audience. And so I would just say, start shooting, just on a video camera, on your phone, on whatever, start telling stories, start writing. If you can write, you got a leg up as a director. I'll tell you that. If you can write, you really do, because nobody's going to just give a director a great script. The great scripts are few and far between, as we all know. And so nobody's going to give one to you if you're starting out. So if you can write, that's great. If you can't write, find a writer, team up with a writer, co-write with a writer, adapt a short story. It's amazing how many first features are adaptations of short stories or something that exists. So don't be afraid to grab a piece of material from somewhere else. Tarkovsky's, Ivan's Childhood is one of the all-time great first features, and it was an adaptation. So, anyways, just that'd be my advice, is just to go out and hone the craft. It's the same thing with acting. Anytime actors, I want to act. Well, like, do some theater, like learn how to act, like learn the craft, and before you try to make it big. So that'd be my advice.
Now, and what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film industry or in life?
Well, I don't know, man. I'm still learning. Just the lessons take me the longest to learn. Gosh, I'd say, how important relationships really are, relationships and collaborations. I think, I knew it kind of instinctually, but looking back at the past 15 years, starting to see, people pop up again on my projects, and just knowing that like it's really building this kind of, again, to use a military term, unit, this kind of brigade or whatever you want to call it, of supporters, and cultivating support from other filmmakers, but also just financiers, and just understanding that it takes a lot of people to believe in you in order to make it through this, and being very respectful of that. And anytime anybody does believe in you, really honor that and be grateful for it. And I think that's the biggest lesson that I've taken away.
And 3 of your favorite films of all time.
A Russian film from 1959 called Ballad of a Soldier, which I think is probably one of the all-time great films. I recommend it. It's also a film not a lot of people have seen, so I highly recommend tracking that one down for anyone out there. I love the 55 movie. Marty, Petty Marty is really high up on my list as well. And then, oh goodness, I mean, I'm a big Joachim Trier fan. So Reprise, his first feature, is one of my favorites too. So I don't know. I mean, geez, I could name, I probably have about 50 favorite films, but those are 3 that just popped off my head.
Sean, man, I appreciate you coming on the show, brother. Congratulations on a great film, and I look forward to seeing more stuff from you in the future, brother. And thank you for bringing Yogi out of the shadows and showing who Yogi really is in your film, brother. So I appreciate you, man. Thanks again.
Yeah, no, thank you for the time, Alex. I really appreciate it. Yeah.